management, firewall, SANs, virtualization. And then about 10 years ago, got into information security and really focused on that, largely for HIPAA in the beginning, but then really branched out to PCI and understanding NIST and other regulations. Joined FR Secure about 2.5 years ago doing the consulting side. So used to be on the side doing the good security work. Now I'm helping others do some hopeful good security work.
Excellent, excellent. And Brad, you're next here.
Yep, Brad Nigh with FR Secure as well. Director of Professional Services and Innovation there. So kind of like Charles said, helping people with security, coming up with new offerings, new methodologies, and just helping people. Been doing this longer than I'd like to admit.
You couldn't shave when you first started, right?
Yeah. Let's just say there's some Y2K stuff going on when I.
Y2K. All right. And do you ever get the science guy?
Oh, all the time, especially when people don't know how it's spelled, because it is spelled differently. But yeah, my comeback is, if I was related, I would have absolutely figured out a way to work with him at this point by now.
Fair enough.
He's like a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, I get the Iron Man reference all the time, and not so much lately, but about a year ago, is nonstop Game of Thrones references.
Mm.
Yeah, I can commiserate with you a little bit there. Mr. Kennedy, you're next.
Speaking of Game of Thrones, my wife had a crush on Tormund for a long time. I think it was the red beard as well. But Mike Kennedy, founder of Austria. We're a cybersecurity solution provider for small, medium-sized businesses. My background, I worked at a lot of the big organizations in town and spent a lot of my career at United Health Group. I remember those Y2K days as well. But our main focus was my job was around building out infrastructure for the acquisition space and securing the acquisitions and building out the global footprint for that. Austria came about so a lot of my friends in the small to medium-sized business did not have security tools available to them. They were leveraging, Windows Defender or some, older free antivirus solutions that they were having ransomware events. And what I really wanted to take these tools and this technology and that we have deployed and bring it to that small business. So we started Austria and built out our product, and we've been going fairly well for the last 3 years. So.
Excellent, excellent. Well, yeah, I think you guys bring just a wealth of knowledge here, so I'm pretty excited to kind of dive in. So, let's just go right at it, right? This whole new world that we live in right now has forced a lot of people to stay at home, and whether they had their own devices, didn't, this current landscape has opened us up for a lot of potential issues. So, one of the questions I had was, what are some of the new trends that you're seeing as a result of all this extra work at home, and even students, right? We even have a lot more online learning happening at home. What are some of the security threats you're seeing? And I'll let any one of you guys take it from here.
Yeah, if I can start, one of the things that we get asked a lot is about split tunneling on your VPN in, right? Split tunneling being company traffic goes over the VPN, internet traffic goes out through your internet pipe. So you're not sending everything through the company's internet. And don't do it is the advice I would have for that. But that's probably one of the bigger things that we've been asked about most frequently.
Okay, great. Charles or Mike, anything else to add?
Really just what I'm seeing is more that remote working is here to stay. Even after we've worked our way through COVID, I think a lot of people are still going to be working from home remotely. Mm-hmm. So stop looking at this as a temporary solution and start looking at it as, how do we do this permanently long term?
Sure.
Yeah, we saw a big shift in moving to the remote work, and some customers weren't able to, or what we saw in some customers and some businesses that we were talking to, they weren't able to support, giving everybody a laptop or giving everybody a company device. And so, I think Brad's comment about, we're seeing a lot of stuff from the home network that is not traditionally been secured, the IoT devices, or, at my house, the 13-year-old son who plays Fortnite and downloads different things and tries to Tor and use proxy redirects. And so, that trying to make sure that that's segmented from the company. We see a lot of that. And then, the traditional kind of situational, where we're seeing a lot more of the influx of the business email compromise and email phishing campaigns that are focused on the COVID, the PPP loans, all of those. It's very opportunistic. It's similar to, in the fall, we always see a lot of DocuSign and contract impersonations, because it's, that time of year where contract renewals happen. So I would say from that email, business phishing, all of those different acronyms, those have really tried to taken off a lot over the last, and we're seeing some events happen based upon that remote workers. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know our IR team has been just really busy, and I think the biggest thing is people working remotely aren't as vigilant, right? They're more relaxed. You're not thinking about it. You're not in a work environment. So yeah, I would agree with what you said there, that just keep training them, sending out those reminders of, hey, be cautious of these emails. Be aware that this stuff is happening.
Yeah, I know that a lot of your scams, it's so very commonsensical to avoid a lot of the stuff that goes on out there, but yet, it must continue to work because scammers are still scamming, right? They're still out there sending those emails out. So
only takes one person to click to compromise the entire organization.
Yep. Yeah. No, I'd love to say I haven't experienced, but I have. Charles?
One thing I like to emphasize with some of those phishing attacks, the ones with grammar and spelling errors, they're not always mistakes or errors. Sometimes those grammar and spelling mistakes are pre-screening attempts. So if you're observant enough to notice those grammar and spelling errors, you're less likely to fall for the rest of the con, whatever it happens to be. You're a waste of the attacker's time. So they're pre-screening their victims so they can move on to easier targets than you.
Yeah. One of the newer attack vectors that we're seeing too, that is probably a really good idea to keep in mind and watch for, is the attackers will send a OneNote, so it won't get caught by antivirus, but inside of it will be a PDF or Word document that is malicious. So you open up the OneNote, click on the attachment inside the OneNote, and you get, it downloads, it sends out the request to whatever command and control server out on the internet and downloads malicious files that way. So be aware if you don't click on something, an attachment, if you're not expecting it.
And to Charles' point too, some of in years, Brad, we've seen URLs that have come across to legitimate sites, and then like in an email phishing campaign, and then at like 10 o'clock, that website turns evil. And then when people are clicking on it, so that having something that can continue that investigation through, we've seen a little bit of those. And then when we've even gotten them forwarded to us and asked, is this a phishing email? When you click on the link, now it's been shut down and it's no longer a live site. So sometimes they try to, like you said, they're trying to find their next victim. They try that little snapshot of window. Can they get you? So
very
diligent.
Yeah,
yep.
for sure. So I'm gonna go, by the way, too, if anybody has any extra questions, obviously we're gonna have a Q&A here at the end, but if you have any specific questions during the conversation, put them in the chat and I'll be sure to get those out. I want to kind of dovetail back. So I think we've all kind of alluded to the work at home worker. Because everything happens so quickly, when you think about people and their devices, whether they brought their own or they were issued a company-owned device, how do you track who has what? What are some of the easy methods that you can kind of remedy that situation to sort through that?
So I guess I could start. Having a good asset inventory tool really will help. Making sure that it can connect, typically like an agent on the endpoint that connects back, either over a VPN or via a web console, just so that you know what's out there, what software is installed. Making sure that if there is a new critical patch that needs to be applied, where it needs to be applied, things like that.
Yeah, to add to that, really when we're talking assets, we're talking hardware, software, and information, so data assets primarily. The way I look at that is we use hardware, or hardware uses software to access information. And it's really the information that we care the most about. Hardware, sure, if it gets destroyed, we need to replace it, and that's a money out of pocket thing. But if information is destroyed, that's your business effectively. So I tend to look at it from the perspective of what information do we need to protect, to what level do we need to protect it, and where should it be stored so we can appropriately protect the data. And then from that perspective, open up access to those locations as appropriate. So methods to access the data, maybe specifying what hardware can be used or what software can be used to access the data. Limit it as much as you can or as much as is reasonable, and then consider accepting risk for other methods that may be needed for the access.
Very good.
Yeah, and I would throw into that too, Charles, about you kind of hit on it a couple of times, the access. What I've seen is in my previous life and a little bit here is not having an inventory of what access levels people have to different systems, and job changes or shift. You have somebody in a finance role and now they're in another role. Do they still need access to the finance, or if you're in a HIPAA or a healthcare organization, HIPAA data, but just simple, who has access to Dropbox in our company, and who have we provided access to files for our Dropbox or OneDrive or our Office 365 environment, and doing those audits against those environments too.
Yeah, and don't rest on sure, they don't need access anymore, but they won't do anything malicious, so what's the harm, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If they don't need it, it can only increase risk. It cannot reduce risk.
Yeah. The best thing that we can say or tell people to do with those job changes, role changes, is treat it like a termination and new hire. There's going to be a transitionary period where they're going to have both most likely, but at the end of that period that's defined, remove them from all the groups that the old role had and add them to the new groups that the new role has. It's probably one of the best ways to prevent that permission creep.
Excellent.
And I guess, depending on the size of the organization, it doesn't need to be an asset tool. It can be, I've used Excel spreadsheets quite a bit to keep track of some of that access level. It's just, when we run across some clients who, they call us up and we've terminated X employee, and how do we, what did they have access to? And I'm like, well, you have to document that. Do you have their laptop? Did you shut off their email? How did you handle their mobile device? All of those different things. So.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of a spreadsheet.
Correct.
They're typically free or a sunk cost, so may as well take advantage of it.
Cool. So let's go to worst case scenario here. You find out you had an incident, there was a data breach of some sort. What are some of the next steps that a business should be thinking about to protect themselves going forward, and how do they recover from the incident itself?
Yeah. So best thing to do is be proactive and get partnership in place with somebody you trust. Have an incident response plan. Again, going back to the assets and the data and knowing what you have and where it's at is really going to dictate how you're going to respond, right? So when you have an incident come in and it's impacting just a workstation and that user didn't have access to anything, that's a different response than, oh, they have the server and it's been
Similar
ransomed.
that we have all of those other steps and plans in place for, we need to have that for, that type of an incident as well.
And, speaking on that topic, we do have, and we'll send this out, links to this, but we have a free incident response plan template on our website that we just put out last month, updated. So anyone can go grab that. We have some, ransomware readiness assessment out there. So you can kind of go through it in a spreadsheet, figure out kind of where you're at in preparedness for that. And then the other thing I'll just mention now before I forget it, because I almost forgot last time I did this. Everybody who's attending this can get a free incident response risk registration with us. That's typically $1,000 value. So we'll send you a workbook, fill it out. You'll get a half hour or an hour, I can't remember, with one of our incident response team members. And then it basically gets all the legal paperwork out of the way, saving typically 8 to 12 business hours. So 1 to 2 days, which in an incident is critical.
So sorry, I had a technical difficulty yet again, so I ducked out, but I appreciate that, Brad, and sharing that with our registrants. So that's great. It's good stuff.
We'll make sure we send all that stuff out, links and everything for the plan templates and things.
That'd be great. That'd be great. So kind of jumping back in here, and maybe if I'm repeating myself with the question or whatnot, but we have all these at-home workers too. The one thing I was really curious about is how do you control access? What are some of the safeguards that business owners can put in place to make sure that we keep the software and the information safe with all these people accessing it from coffee shops and their homes and off their devices wherever they might be?
Yeah, so I think from a high level, using a good VPN that with encryption is going to be really important, and multi-factor authentication everywhere you can. Those are the first steps, right? Because you want to control access into the environment. So that's where I would start, and then obviously you would look at. I would probably do additional logging and monitoring, being aware of what's going on, because you're not around the people anymore, right? So just kind of getting more visibility into what's going on in your network.
Okay.
Yeah, and sort of a difference between if it's company-owned or personal-owned devices at home. Obviously, company-owned devices are easier to control because the company owns them. They can configure them as needed for the business reasons. If it's a personal device, you really need to consider the methods that they use to, again, get in to access the information. Perhaps forcing them to log into some terminal server or a virtual desktop, a VDI instance or something. One way that I like to really emphasize that point, all information that allowed to leave your control prior to allowing it.
Yeah, that famous line, cloud is just somebody else's computer. So so at Austria, we provide a VPN solution. We use a Palo Alto's VPN product, and we deploy an endpoint security agent that both of those provide logging into we have a security incident event monitoring, and then we feed it into Splunk, which is a big, a lot of just data, and we have the team that's looking at that stuff real time, and we have pre-configured alerts. So we have quite a few clients that have BYOD as well as company-owned machines, and it's fallen into multiple spectrums of a mobile device management solution that puts if you're using a mobile device, we can enroll it into the system so that we can kind of monitor. We've deployed VPN agents out to personal computers that they use to log in to access company systems, whether it's in the cloud or it's on premise, so that we can ensure that the only way that they come in is through that secure encrypted network. And then also we've on some BYOD devices, the businesses ask their employees put in that endpoint agent too, and where we can get a lot more in logging monitoring. But to Charles's point, to really have them, have a secure environment they can connect into, and also that, the two-factor, and not just, that text me or the, text to my number, the one-time password options as well, to send you an email, or to use, Microsoft's Authenticator or Google Authenticator, so that, you bypass the, SIM hijacking, somebody taking over your phone, or, compromised email as well. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Yeah, one thing that I would say, just to, keep in mind, because of the BYOD, and it's a totally different landscape, is the legal implications, right? You're now putting a device on a personal, or an agent on a personal device. What happens if you break it? What happens if you find something that, is not good? So I would say work with HR and your legal team to make sure you've got, really solid understanding of what you're exposing yourself to.
Yeah, being able to, we kind of talked about it in the beginning, the split tunneling too, being able to download files onto that workstation, because it's quicker, faster, easier to edit. And then now you have maybe, PCI or personal identifying information, or, something that competes against a government law that you're not allowed to do. So, yeah.
Oh, I can speak to that. Jones does a great job of keeping me on lockdown, and as nice as it would be to have access when I'm remote to some of the things, no can do. So yeah, I as a user, it's frustrating, but then you think about it from the corporate level, and it's exactly the right decision to keep everything on lockdown for sure. So I want to make sure we leave some time for some questions here. Nothing through the chat yet, but I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Just, I think, we've heard it referenced, and you guys are some of the experts that I've come across in this situation that's not without a television camera in front of them. So how concerned should we be about China and the election, or Russia, or whoever they might hear? How legitimate are the things that we're hearing in the news, and are there things as voters that we should be thinking about during this election season?
Funny enough, last week, it all blurs together. Evan and I talked about that election security on the Unsecurity podcast. So I won't recap all of it here, but go give that a listen. We covered a lot of things in that. But the disinformation, misinformation is probably going to be the biggest challenge. You're going to see a lot of the phishing scams and those types of things around it.
Yeah, I just listened to that podcast yesterday on my walk. Nice work. The way I like to think about it in con artists, it's really just the easiest avenue of attack. If they can get you to do what they want you to do, that's what they're going to do. So in this example, it's our opinion that it's far easier to influence the masses to do what you want them to do than to try to get into all these different voting systems and manipulate the votes. I also think that any of the concerns about mail-in voting fraud, I think people are people, and there are probably just as many fraudulent votes for one as there are for the other. So those mail-in votes that might be stolen and fraudulently filled out, it's probably pretty much a wash, and I think it's more important that everyone votes than we worry about one party getting fraudulent votes when both parties are probably getting similar numbers.
And then those numbers are such a small percentage
Right.
overall that you just don't see it.
Right.
You know, like I mentioned it, tampering with the mail is a federal offense. And then doing the election messing with that is a federal offense. You really have to want to do something to, you know, you don't mess with the postal inspectors. Just, that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
Right.
that's good
And
advice.
And it's so much easier to, you know, go into Facebook and create an account and spam out a bunch of, you know, disinformation that, you know, is fake because you're and we talked about it at the beginning, but there's been so many great documentaries this year on, you know, the great hack and how Cambridge Analytica and all the data that was used and how that this, and there's another one about the social media and how we're
Dilemma,
yeah, the social dilemma. So it's really, you know, that's more prevalent than we think about because it's preying on emotion. It's the same thing when we see with the gift card scam, and it's, you know, the other phishing campaigns. They're leveraging your social media to, you know, capture you emotionally and then point you in a direction. So,
yeah. And you don't even need to write an article. Just create a catchy headline and share that. And people will share and get real fired up over whatever the headline is.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, good. Well, we do have a question coming in through the chat here from Lois. Great question too. What are your feelings and sentiments about you know, looking at the cloud versus actual on-site storage?
So I think it's every business is going to be different. You're going to have to look at it. It's a risk decision, right? You're going to either, if you have it on site, you have to worry about UPS and battery and the UPS batteries, the backups of it, all, you know, protecting it physically, those things, versus you're going to transfer that risk up to the cloud, but that now has a different set of risks. Do you have the permission set properly, or do you have it open to everyone, right? So I think it's really going to be an individual decision, and just make sure that you understand the risks and benefits of both sides.
One thing you can do, and I look at it, they both have benefits and absolutely risks. On-site backups for fast, large data restores. So if a system goes down or you need to restore an entire file server or something, on-site is going to be significantly faster. But cloud for the resilience, but then the risks of who can access it. One thing I've played with at home is I've got some on-site file server storage in my home data center. But then I also encrypt all of it with a very long, super random key, and then upload that to a cloud repository. And then I've just scheduled jobs to make a differential and a full backup on a monthly or daily basis. So now I don't need to worry about, well, nobody can access it. I trust the encryption when it's in that cloud storage. But if I need to restore a lot of it fast, I've got the local copy of it.
Yeah, I always,
risk management.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about the, you know, cloud is just somebody else's computer. You know, I'll say it again, you know, on premise, you're right, but you got to patch, you got to update. You know, we run across servers that are, you know, 2008, 2011, they're not getting security patches. So you can buy them, you know, the money or spend the money in the infrastructure to upgrade. But then also at the same time, a lot of these cloud providers, you know, depending upon what you get from a solution, they're requiring that you take the risk and you're doing the patching, you're doing the updates to it. Not always. Just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's backed up either. So, you know, having a backup on your cloud environment is important as well.
Yeah. That's a really good point on knowing what the expectations are for both sides. You know, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, they're going to have different levels of responsibility. So before you go and do something, make sure you understand what that cloud provider is going to give you and what you're going to have to be responsible for.
Right.
Yeah, you mentioned patching and absolutely can't agree more. Reminds me of a joke. that in the home environment, Linux is the most secure environment in the world, or operating system in the world. In the business environment, Linux is the least secure operating system in the world. And because people at home, if they're installing Linux, it's because they're big geeks and they play around and lock it down and manage it. If it's in the business, it was an open source tool that they just got to implement some solution. And then it gets forgot about because it doesn't coordinate with the patch management or asset inventory or any of that stuff.
I picked up about 80% what you said there, Charles, so thank you.
Oh, no.
I'll give you the explanation.
Brad
Yeah,
and I
wasn't-
got it.
Wasn't that big a deal.
I know you and Brad would get it, Mike. Yes, I would hope. So that's all right. Let's talk expense ratios and mutual funds, fellas.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, let's do that and pour people to tears.
I was gonna say, that's our turn for our eyes to glaze over versus
right.
typically when we're talking to people, they just go glaze over.
Look at the time.
So speaking of time, we have about 3 minutes left. Any questions from the audience here? Give a couple seconds. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. So
Where do we reach, if I may, for the offer that Brad made?
Yep, thanks, Lois. I was going to close with that. So everything today, the video is going to be a little choppy from today, I believe, but there'll be a video as well as all the resources that Brad mentioned. That'll get sent out in a separate email here, and that'll go out here hopefully within the next couple of days. So by the end of the week. Okay. Oh, well, here's a question. Is quantum computing a risk coming up for encryption?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, probably don't need to worry about it for a while. Encryption algorithms are significantly strong, and if you use longer and longer keys, it extends the time to find it. Or if they use longer bit ciphers, it makes it outside of the reach of current quantum computing.
Yeah.
So encryption algorithms are going to adapt. We've already got quantum resistant algorithms. We just need to start using them, but I wouldn't be dropping everything to start implementing yet.
Yeah, and cost is going to be a big barrier too. It's going to be very few people that are going to have that. And those people, you're going to get your stuff regardless.
Yeah, those people have other methods in.
Yeah.
I would focus more on asset inventory, endpoint security, VPN, and email phishing.
Yeah.
For the next couple of years.
When the FBI is still complaining about Apple's encrypted phones, it means the FBI isn't using quantum encryption or quantum computing that is capable of breaking into them yet.
Okay. Well, this is, I mean, I think I feel like we just scratched the surface and stuck at a very high level here. I feel like this conversation go on for hours, but we do have a day to get back to. I know Charles has a 1 o'clock coming up here. So I want to thank Charles, Brad, and Mike for hanging out with us today, sharing their expertise. And I also, again, we'll email all the information out here in the next couple of days. And I just really appreciate the conversation. And just know that, your data is important. So make sure you have a plan, mitigate risk, and make sure that that you're buttoning up every loose end that you can. And these guys can surely help with that. So with that, thanks for everybody. Thanks for everybody's time. Again, shout out to my sponsors, Skull Marketing, SDK CPAs, and Compass Realty. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody. Stay safe with the snow.
Thank you.